Okay, the first thing you need to do for your conditional statement spreadsheet is to come up with a conditional statement that you'd like to use. So my example is if the student earns at least 70%, then they will pass integrated math 2. And my if then else statement is if the student earns at least 70%, then they will pass integrated math 2, or else they will have to retake it next year. Once you have your conditional statement decided upon, you have it recorded here in cells A, 2, and 3. Then you'll need to identify the different parts, the hypothesis, conclusion, and then alternative conclusion here in the specified locations. Once you have that stuff done, you will need to create a flow chart that represents your conditional statement. So here is mine in Google Draw. So I have my start terminal, my decision rhombus, and then the two potential outcomes here. You'll screenshot that and put it in this first tab, the flowchart tab. And that should be all that you need to do for this first tab here. For the if-then tab, you're going to be creating some data to illustrate this statement, and you'll actually be writing a formula that represents your if-then situation. So we're going to focus on just the if-then that you see up here. So as you can see in my example here, I have listed some students that took integrated math 2. So you'll need to have at least 10 points of data to work with. So regardless of what you decided upon for your conditional statement, make sure you have at least 10 examples to use for your data. So once you have your data in a little table like this and you're ready to write your formula, you are going to click on cell D8 and we're going to put an if-then code in here. So remember, anytime we're putting a formula in a spreadsheet, the first thing we type in the cell is the equal sign. And then we're going to type if. I'm going to select if from the menu here. And so remember, I want my code to say if the score in column C is at least 70%, then the student will pass the class. So to do that, I'm going to have my if, and then I'm going to click on cell C8. And so to say as long as it's greater, if it's at least 70%, I'm just going to say if it's greater than 69%. So that represents my hypothesis, the first part of my conditional. And then I'm going to separate the hypothesis and the conclusion with a comma. And I want my spreadsheet to give me, if they are greater than 69%, I want it to say pass in column D. So I'm going to put some quotation marks and type pass, and then close the parentheses and hit enter. So you'll see that Cupcake had a 76%. That's greater than 69%, so it was at least 70%. So she passed integrated math 2. What a good girl. So if you recall from our spreadsheet unit, you can copy this this formula to all the cells below. So I'm going to do that. Remember, to do that, you click on the cell and then hover over this little blue box until it makes the crosshairs, and then you can click and drag it down. So as you can see, my formula copied correctly. So Sprinkle had a 92%, so she got pass. Honeycat, 82% pass. Cooper got a 56%, so that was not at least 70%, and so it gave us a false reading on that one. You can see the other examples where they did not have a passing grade. So in our next example, we are actually going to have a conclusion of fail instead of false. So this is just looking at, remember, our if-then. So we didn't have any sort of alternative conclusion for if our hypothesis was false. So in our next tab over, you're going to do the exact same thing. You'll identify your if-then statement, if-then else statement. Here, also make sure that you have your R, your alternative conclusion. And then you're going to do the same thing but your formula is going to be a tad different. So in cell D8, just like before, we're going to type the equal sign, if, and then click cell C8 is greater than 69%. So that is our hypothesis. We're going to separate that with a comma again and do the same thing as before. I want it to say pass if my hypothesis is true. But the thing we're going to add to this formula is we're going to add the else piece, our alternative conclusion. So we're going to add another comma, and I want it to say retake if it is not passing. So I'm going to put some more quotations, close parentheses, hit enter, and I'm going to copy my formula down just like I did before. So now you can see the ones in the previous the ones in the previous tab that said false. Now, because we gave an alternative conclusion for what should happen if our hypothesis was false, now those all say retake. So that's our if then else statement.